case you're just joining us, you're watching Business Defined. We are bringing you the very latest on what's making headlines in the corporate scene. Well, we have a budget analysis of what you should expect tomorrow from the infrastructure sector. But then again, let's first analyze the 2014-2015 budget estimates. And tomorrow, Thursday, of course, the National Treasury Cabinet Secretary Henry Botich will be presenting on the floor of the House the budget policy statement. What is it exactly that you should expect from this budget? Should we see things being done differently? Are we expecting any shakeups? Well, with me in the studio is a tax manager who will be giving us sort of an analysis and an insight into that. I have with me Starlings Muchiri from the East African Tax Consulting Firm. And Muchiri, good to see you again this year. Again, another budget in place.
Thank you, Doreen. It's good to see you too.
All right. Now, tomorrow we'll be having another budget presented, of course, for the financial year 2014-2015. And again, the numbers have gone up to 1.78 trillion shillings. Round that up, it's about 1.8 trillion shillings. Are we being realistic, taking a look at where Kenya is at the moment? We have a devolved government structure. We have the cost of living up. Are we being realistic?
Yes, interesting, Doreen, as you said. It's the biggest budget that we have had so far. 1.8 billion, it's quite huge. But this is not anything unexpected. The government is on a very expansionary trend. So this is really something that would be expected. It's not out of the ordinary.
What do you expect of the budget deficit then? Taking a look at the recurrent expenditure and, of course, the revenue that we're expecting to collect, what do you think will happen to the deficit?
Well, I expect the deficit to go up, and this has been happening for the last 20 years or so. So the deficit will increase. But if you look at the real terms, if you compare the size of the deficit and the size of the economy, you will find that the deficit is actually not very large compared to the GDP. So as long as the economy is growing and as long as the government is utilizing funds properly for purposes of growth in the future, then the deficit should not be a very big problem.
All right. But then again, Muchiri, last month we saw the inflation rate go up. Of course, that was due to the pressure that was coming from the high cost of living. And overall, we do expect that some of the measures that the government will take to finance this ambitious budget will be probably taxed. And what do you think then that will do to the government? Because we have loopholes in collecting taxes, and then again, the purchasing power from the monarchy. Do you think the government will get its target of collecting revenue from tax?
For the tax revenue, let us hope that the government does, because as you can see, huge budget. You also need a lot of efforts from KRA to collect the revenues, to bridge the gap between the revenues and the expenses. I would expect KRA to get a bit more creative and efficient in collecting revenues. Let them not go back to the same old taxpayers who are taxed time and time again. Let them look maybe a bit wider for the people who are not actually paying taxes. They can also look at...
what group is that doesn't quite pay taxes that you're talking about?
I'm mostly talking about the small taxpayers. And the reason why they don't pay taxes for most of them is because of the cost of compliance. I will tell you, Doreen, for a fact that for a small business, if you are to start a business today, the cost of doing your books, the cost of filing your returns, the cost of hiring an accountant to get your tax work done will be at least 500,000 per year. So probably this is something that the government needs to look at. Yes, you want to collect taxes from them, but the cost of compliance must also come down. For instance, I would expect simpler tax compliance rules for the small businesses. and say that maybe you don't have to pay taxes every month. Then if you just pay taxes every quarter or half a year, then your costs of compliance will come down.
All right, you've talked about the small businesses, but then again, in the 2013-2014 budget, we saw the government sort of targeting the real estate. They said, oh, well, you need to pay taxes, and we're going to be very stringent. Do you think that made much economic sense then? Do you think the government was able to achieve its target of collecting much money from taxes then?
From the real estate, I know this is still work in progress, so I think it's a long-term project to collect money from the real estate. There is a feature that we've been talking about, the capital gains tax, for the last 2, 3, 4 years. For this, I'll not be surprised if tomorrow Mr. Rotich says that the capital gains tax is coming back, but maybe to apply to certain classes of people or certain classes of turnover, so that if you are just doing your small business, selling property, you may not be caught up, but if you are dealing with the big projects, then you'll be required to account for capital gains tax.
All right. What's your prediction then, Muchiri, when it comes to cost of doing business in coming months? Taking a look at the Eurobond, that the government, of course, is hoping will ease pressure on domestic borrowing. Is it, because I've had critics saying, well, the Eurobond is not the ultimate solution. Do you think, though, that it will ease the cost of doing business for the Kenyan businessmen?
Certainly, I think it's a good idea that the government decided to go and borrow from out of the country. So now the government is no longer competing with you and me, at the banks to get credit. So if the local businessman, the mwananchi, can go to the banks and take a loan and be able to grow their business, then that will be an advantage. On the other hand, yes, the Eurobond is not cure-all. It's not really a cure-all. So even if we are going to have maybe less pressure on loans or funds, locally from the banks, but the government still has to use that money, in a good way.
All right.
And even the banks, at the end of the day, if they don't lower their interest rates, then businessmen are not likely to come and take the loans, so it will not really help if we don't take advantage of that.
All right. Now, I know the critics of this particular budget have said, well, it's too ambitious to have a 1.8 trillion shillings budget. Well, then again, you haven't quite addressed the absorption capacity, particularly so with the devolved structures. We're talking about, we're saying the government found a couple of projects that didn't quite take off. We were talking about the laptop. It had quite a huge allocation in the last financial year, the Galana irrigation scheme as well. But then again, those projects haven't quite kicked off. And then again, we're seeing this in this financial year, they're also getting huge allocations. Do you think the government then is not considerate when it comes to looking at the absorption capacity?
Yes, I think on that side, the government really needs to pull up its socks. We had a lot of money being returned all the way from 2012 last year. And if you look at the figures, most of this money is development expenditure, and it's being returned to Treasury. What are the leaders doing back at the grassroots? So this is really something that needs to be addressed. You can have a huge budget, but so long as the money is not being used, then you're just having papers. It's just paper budgets. So I think this is an area that the government really needs to pull up its socks and make sure that even the counties, the devolution structures are up and running, and they're able to absorb all this money that is going to the counties.
What are the dangers, Muchiri, that come with that kind of budget, where you want to tax people more, probably, and of course borrow more to finance your budget, but then again you don't have absorption capacity? That means that the projects where you want to inject money, they're not bringing in anything. What does that do for the GDP especially?
For the GDP, I would expect, you're going to have a depressed economy. So if you are, taxing people, if you are borrowing a lot of money, but the money is idle, then
you're investing where you're not reaping back.
Yes, exactly, that's the word. So absorption is a big issue, and as well as the taxation.
All right. From East African Tax Consulting, from your pre-budget analysis, are you seeing probably the government looking at the prices of these basic items? Every time we hear the budget being read, we want to see the prices of goods, especially foodstuff, coming down. Should we expect that tomorrow?
I don't think so. I genuinely don't think so. If you look at the VAT Act that was passed last year, it's still in effect. We are still to see the full implications. So the prices will continue to go up. They will continue to go up. And remember, if the government decides to spend more in the country, then you have much more money floating around. There are people who are doing business with the government. There are people who are doing business with the people who are doing business with the government. So you're likely to have, a lot of money in the economy. Prices will go up because of some inflationary pressures. So what the common wananchi's or the common businessman's focus should be then is how to grow with the government, how to grow with the budget. The government is spending, then the common wananchi also has to increase their income. And that is why I started by saying that in as much as the government wants the small businesses to grow, then they also need to
address some underlying issues.
Yes, to address the issues and to let to ease the compliance costs and the cost of doing business in Kenya.
All right. By the way, Muchiri, let's go back to the Eurobond, because I want to take a look at what effect that will have on the Kenyan shilling. Will it stabilize the shilling? And I'm asking because we want to look at the balances again of exports and imports. Do you think the Eurobond will stabilize the shilling?
Well, for start, we'll be having a lot of foreign exchange, which is good. The reserves, the foreign exchange reserves increase. The government can be able to pay the contractors from China, from the US, and from elsewhere without necessarily touching what comes from the local exports to the other countries. But in the long run, remember, this money will need to be repaid. The interest payments as well as the principal will still need to be repaid to the lenders.
Right.
The government will still need to, they still need foreign exchange for them to pay those loans. Well, as it will take a longer time, for the payments to start going out. But by that time then, hopefully the government should have realized the higher economic growth and higher earning capacity for them to be able to repay those loans.
The public debt.
Yes.
All right. Starlings, give us your closing remarks as regards the coming fiscal agenda.
The coming fiscal agenda, it's quite an expansionary budget, and I would expect for the next maybe 5 years or so that the budget will keep on going up and up and up. But I'd also expect the Kenya Revenue Authority to be a bit more creative and a bit more efficient in collecting taxes, so that the burden of the taxpayer still remains not so much.
Yeah. But then again, are we looking forward to probably by the end of this year we should be seeing a bit of growth in the gross domestic product, is it?
Yes.
With the inflation rates?
Yes, the estimates are at 5% or thereabouts. Well, if we can do much better than that, maybe 10%, I don't think there'll be any complaints.
All right.
Yes.
Oh, well, we've been talking to a partner of East African tax consulting firm, that is Starlings Muchiri. So he's just giving us an insight of what you should expect tomorrow from about 2:30 p.m. when the Cabinet Secretary for Treasury, Henry Rutich, does present on the floor of the House the budget policy statement. Let's take a look at other stories that we're still following for.